So these are the assembly instructions to my octagonal dimensional birthday card. There are lots of different pieces to this card and lots of similar layers. So we're going to start by just gathering up the different layers. So this piece is for my shaker box, and it has 2 frame pieces, 1 background piece, and a piece of acetate. The second shaker box is the same. It has 2 frame pieces, a different colored background piece, and a piece of acetate. These are the 5 remaining pages. The base piece for every single one of these pages is the same size octagon cut out of the same material, so the same 80-pound cardstock. So the next layer for all 5 of these is cut out of assorted pattern paper, but the size does differ. These 2 are the same size, the larger size, and I'm putting them both here. So the rest of them are slightly smaller. This one is the smallest, and I'm putting it here, and these 2 are medium size, and I'm putting them there. I'm decorating them while they're flat and in no particular order because the assembly of them goes towards the end. I have some gold foil craft board, which I'm putting on the first one. So this one has the little double octagon with a score line in the center. I folded down on the score line. I have pages for this one that will be glued inside. And so this one's my little card that folds over. The second one is for my little vintage sentiment. This is 60-pound cardstock that sort of has a sepia look to it, and I'm going to iron on my sentiment because of the size of those tiny little letters. And the third one, also a gold foil craft board, and it's the same size as the first one, so it doesn't matter where you place it. And it has a little envelope with my little note card inside. The next foil craft board piece is slightly larger than the previous one, and it's going to be used for my number 60. My 60 is composed of 4 layers of craft board, and the top layer is cut out of cricket wood veneer. And then my last layer has a decorative octagon inside, and it has a little pocket for the little pictures that we're going to be inserting. I'm going to start with my panel for the 60. So I have my 4 layers of craft board for each number. For each layer, I'm just putting glue on the back and stacking them up on top of one another. And then I have my 2 layers of wood veneer, and I'm just gluing them on top. So next I have my patterned paper, my piece of gold foil craft board, which I decided to emboss, and I'm putting glue on the back of it. Just gluing it to the center of my panel, trying to center it as much as possible. Then I'm going to glue my number 60 down, trying to center it as well. And then I want this to pop off the page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some foam tape, and I'm just going to layer the underside of my octagon with foam tape. So now that I've covered the back with foam, I'm just going to remove the backing on my foam tape. And then I'm just going to position my 60 in the center of my base panel. So that's the first of my 7 panels done. Next one I'm going to do is my little note card. I'm going to fold down on the score lines for my envelope. So I'm putting glue, I'm putting glue on one of the points and then folding the other point over on top. Then I'm going to put glue all along the bottom part and a little bit of glue right here on the top, and just glue that over. And then I have my little note card. I'm going to fold it in half, and it belongs inside. So what I normally do at this point is I take a scrap of vinyl, and I have a 1/2 inch punch. Once you finish signing, or whoever's going to sign the card, then you can close the envelope and just put your adhesive dot to close your envelope. So I'm putting that inside for now, just for future use. So just like I did for the previous layer, and gluing it down to my patterned cardstock piece, I'm going to put foam tape on the back of my envelope. So I'm removing the backing from my foam tape and gluing my envelope so that it's more or less centered. And then I'm going to cover the back of my patterned cardstock with foam tape. I'm just going to show you how I do my foam tape. I have this very ordinary piece of parchment paper, and I'm going to put my panel face down on my parchment paper, and I'm just using a pencil to draw around my shape, cut around it, leaving a good margin around. The reason I do this is because foam tape is very, very sticky, And what it does is it leaves a nice little sticky film on my beautiful scissors. So if I use the parchment paper, it still leaves an adhesive residue, but it's definitely easier to deal with. And then I flip my piece over. I can clearly see my pencil marks, so I'm just cutting inside those pencil marks. And then it's easy just to apply my foam tape to the back of my panel like so, and just glue it to the larger octagon. So now I'm moving on to my pocket for my little photos. So to protect the person's privacy, I haven't printed out any photos. So I'm putting my base layer aside. I have the next two sizes. So I'm just gluing my decorative layer to my panel, and then I'm folding down on all the score lines for the tabs on my pocket piece. I did not emboss this myself. This is some cardstock that I picked up at some point. I'm going to place my pocket face down on my mat, and then I'm going to position my piece inside. I'm putting glue on that bottom tab, and I'm pushing my piece right up against the score line and folding it back. And then I'm taking the piece into my hand. I'm going to put glue on one of the remaining tabs, and I'm going to push it so the score line is right up against the tab, but I'm holding it off the mat because I don't want this panel to be flat. I want the tab to be flat. I'm doing that with the other tab as well, and then a little tab at the side, and again I'm pushing it inwards, and then I'm doing it on the opposite side, just pushing it inwards. And what that does, it creates a pocket with a little bit of curve to it. And then I have a decorative piece I've cut out of that gold craft board. I'm just gluing that on top. And now I'm going to put some more foam tape on the back of my panel. So just like the previous panels, I'm adhering my pocket to the base panel. So then I have my panels for the photos. What I'm going to do is cut out some photos to fit within these rectangles. I'm putting glue on the back of my panel, and I've got my pattern cardstock. I'm gluing my panel to my cardstock like so. So I'm going to do my two other panels in tandem because they both have something in common. I've cut the text and the images out in iron-on. The weeding for these little tiny letters was very difficult. It was so much easier to do using iron-on. So now I'm going to apply my iron-on to my panels. According to the Cricut heat guide, I need to set my Easy Press Mini to the lowest setting. To apply it, I have to preheat for 5 seconds. And then I'm going to place my iron-on in the center of the panel. And then it says to use constant movement and firm pressure for 25 seconds. So I'm going to put this aside and wait for it to cool down before I peel it. And I'm going to just do the exact same thing for all of my panels. So once they've cooled down, just peel away the liner. So my vintage sign is the easiest one. I'm just going to glue it down to my pattern cardstock and put foam tape behind and glue it to the base panel. So now for my little card. I'm not saying that you're old, but flip it open. My little cow. If you were milk, I would sniff you first. So I'm just going to glue those panels down in that order. So now I'm going to put glue on the back of it and glue it down to my craft board panel. And I'm going to flip my piece over and put foam tape on the back of it. And then I'm going to adhere the foam tape to my patterned paper. And then I'm going to put foam tape on the back of it and adhere it to the base layer. Both of the shaker boxes go together the same way. The only difference between them are the decorations or the embellishments. So I'm just folding down on all the score lines, paying special attention to these tiny little triangles on either side of every second tab. So now that I've folded down on my score lines, I'm going to glue down the base piece for the bottom of my shaker element. This is just the background color. I'm going to work my way around the perimeter of my shape. I'm putting glue on that very last section. So from the score line to the end, and I'm just folding that end piece over and gluing it down. It should be just along the edge of my decorative background. So just putting glue on that last section, folding at that first score line, and then folding it down to the base. Next, I'm going to start with one of those tabs that has the little triangles, and I'm going to carefully make sure that those little triangles are inserted inside its neighbor as I pop it up as well. And I'm just going around the entire perimeter, just tucking those little triangles in and making sure that a nice miter edge is formed. So now I'm going to take red line tape. I've put red line tape over all the joins, and I'm going to remove the liner. So now that the liner's off, I'm going to just put another layer of double-sided tape along the straight areas. Then I have my two frame pieces, one cut out of gold craft board and the other one out of 80-pound cardstock. I'm just going to glue the smaller one to the top of the larger. I'm going to put red line tape all around the perimeter of my frame on the underside. I'm going to remove the liner on my red line tape. And I'm going to remove the protective film on my acetate. This is Cricut acetate, so it has a film on both sides. Placing it, centering it as best I can over the opening. So I have my happy birthday sentiment. I'm just going to apply it to the upper part of my frame. So then I have my shaker elements, and I've cut these out of Cricut party foil. The key to successfully cutting party foil is how well your material is adhered to the mat. So you want to make sure that you use your brayer or something to really adhere it to your mat. Your mat has to be very sticky and your blade has to be very sharp. I like customizing my own shaker elements like this, make my own shapes, people's names. Very personalized card when you're able to actually cut someone's name, especially if they have an unusual name, and just include that among the shaker elements. So I'm trying to just make sure that all my 60s are in the right direction. You could certainly put more than that or different colors. Then I'm going to remove the liner on my red line tape. Next I'm taking my frame and I'm just lowering it onto my shaker. For the second shaker box, I cut cheers out of the same vinyl and applied it the exact same way. And I used the happy birthday sentiment, and I cut my clinking glasses out of foil cardstock. Cut the purple part out of Cricut shimmer paper, but you could use glitter or foiled paper for that as well. So these are my 7 panels. I've cut out some craft board that they're all going to be adhered to. So they're all the same size and they're identical, so I'm grabbing one for the base, and my happy birthday goes on the base at the bottom. So I have these rectangular pieces with score lines on each side that create tabs. So I'm going to put the larger ones aside for now, and I have 3 hinges that are a little bit smaller in size. For the largest one, I glued it down on the first panel and then glued my shaker box on top of it. And then I chose the vintage panel for the next one. So now I'm going to put the join on the next panel, taking one of my hinge pieces, and I'm putting glue from the score line to the edge. I'm just gluing it down to my craft board piece, and I want the score line of my tab to be right up against the cut edge of my craft board piece, like so. And then I'm putting glue from the score line to the edge of the other tab. Then I'm gluing my piece down the same way on the other side. And then for this layer, I've put my envelope and my pictures. And I'm moving on to the next layer. So I have one hinge on the right, next hinge on the left, next hinge on the right. So I'm putting glue all over from the score line to the edge of that piece and gluing it exactly the way I did the previous layers. And then I have my 60 with my little card. I'm just going to glue those down. And then I have my last shaker. Glue on the back of it and gluing it down to that top panel. So next I'm going to make the cover. I'm going to flip my piece over, and I have my hinges on both sides, on the left and the right. I'm going to adhere my hinge pieces to my back, much as I did for the others, like so. I'm going to flip my piece over again. I'm putting glue on my tab, and attaching my left hand side of my cover. And then I'm going to do the same for the right hand side. And then I'm going to have my 2 layers to put on my cover. So the top layer gets adhered right to the edge. I'm trying to have an even border around the rest. And then I'm adhering it to my cover piece. And I'm going to do the exact same thing for the left hand side. So these thin strips are cut out of foil craft board, but silver. And I'm just gluing them both to the very edge of my opening. So I've flipped my piece over and I have these decorative layers. I'm going to glue these to the hinge pieces, and I'm going to glue this down to the very back like so. This is going to serve as my opening. So I have 1 layer of craft board, another layer of craft board, and this is also in the silver foil. I'm just gluing them together to make it nice and sturdy. I have more of that blue vinyl for my sentiment, and I've applied it to this panel, which I'm going to glue onto my craft board. So I'm just putting a strip of foam tape on the very edge, adhere this down to the center like so. And I have these Velcro dots. I'm going to decorate the hinges with these panels, and I'm also going to glue a decorative layer on top of the inside of my cover.